you can do this, right?
Okay.
Because your view is better from I think for me, Pastor Bailey, I think we've got to go to the beginning.
Yes.
The beginning of the summit in Grenadendal. For many of us, we know that Grenadendal started when there was a reaction to the Rooibos matter.
Yes.
Right? And then FINSA said they want to take up the Rooibos matter. They wanted to launch a class action. And with that, from the class action, it gravitated to something else where we decided the nation needs to consult in terms of what the class action should be.
Yes.
Right? Because it wasn't only about Rooibos. There were other things. There was buhu and a whole range of other things that should actually happen.
That's right.
But the question was raised as to who is going to do this. You know, these were the questions that arose.
Yes.
And for me, I felt, well, we can't keep on talking as different people, but we need to find a vehicle. Now, when FINSA called us, my money is always behind FINSA, not because I'm subjective of FINSA, but because FINSA has put out its documents. I know Greg Fick for a while now. We met him at the round table in Johannesburg.
Yes.
And he's been a good person. I like his character. I like his outspokenness. I like the things that he does. I like the fact that they put out their documents without hesitation. Yes. They put out their documents. They said, yes, this is who we are. This is what we want to be. And from what I understood is we went there to form a nation that comprises of everyone in the nation. Whoever is part of our people must be part of the nation.
Yes.
Nonetheless, this in a short space of time, this was advertised. I advertised it as well on Facebook, on WhatsApp, and I'm not too sure where else it was advertised. But I wasn't sure whether it was going down. But then I saw the necessity and the urgency in us coming together, because the situation now demands that we become a nation, not that we theorize about being a nation, but that we become a nation. So I went down, I wasn't sure whether it was going down, but I managed to get some money together, because last year was, from a business perspective, was a terrible year for me. I had lots of hiccups and problems and so on and so forth. So what I did was I said, I'm going down to Grenadendal. I jumped in my car, filled up petrol, put in my clothes, and I drove down to Bluff. When I got to Grenadendal, Grenadendal was a beautiful place, a very, very beautiful place. Yeah. And if you look at it, it was symptomatic of the problem within our community. Grenadendal is nestled at the bottom of a mountain range. Beautiful place, nice, tranquil, passive, but it's disturbing at the same time. When I drove into Grenadendal, on the left-hand side of Grenadendal are white people, on the right-hand side is another white town, and in the center is Grenadendal. These two areas are rich. The one is a town, it's got everything, white shops, coffee shops, everything that you see there. On the other side is a white farmer and other farmers, and they're wealthy. And I spoke to someone, they said, this farmer helps the people in the prisons, he does X, Y, Z, but it's the people of Grenadendal's land. Yes. But they're poor. If you go into the houses, believe me, your house is a beautiful house compared to the houses we saw there. The houses are falling down, you know, and in there is a mission. And the mission is the property of the Moravian Church. But the people are poor. And apparently Grenadendal was very self-sufficient. It's got a museum, but now it's sunken to the point that you'll see kids walking around, they're aimless, they don't know where they're going, they don't know what they're going to do. So Grenadendal was the perfect setting for this particular summit. Yes. The summit was a summit that was action-driven, for example, because for me, I was tired of summits. I was tired of conferences, I was tired of meetings. I wanted outcomes. Because we've been having meetings, and those meetings go nowhere. We argue and everybody goes away and nothing gets done. So we then got into the Genadendal Summit, and the Genadendal Summit, it was good because it was participatory. Everybody participated. We helped. We set up the hall. It wasn't people on a stage talking down to the people at the foot of the stage. It was people talking horizontally, and the meeting was very, very productive. It had a lot of intelligent people. It had what I see as part of the critical intelligentsia that it needed. It had planners, it had activists, it had quite a few religious leaders. It had all kinds of people, and those people added to the richness of the experience and the richness of the exchange of ideas. We ran the summit on 5 questions to guide us. The 5 questions were: why are we here? What are we going to do? Who's going to do it? When do we do it? It was 5. I can't remember the other question. But those were the 5 questions that guided the entire discussions over the 2 or 3 days. 3 days. That guided the discussion so that we would come out with an outcome. Because there were, for example, legal issues. Who was going to do the legal issues? There was the summit, the land issues. Who was going to do the land issues? There was, for example, Genadendal. Who was going to address Genadendal? So that was where we got together and we decided, no, let's be a nation. Let's not be an organization that thinks it's a nation. Let's rather start now and begin building a nation. Whether we call the nation FINSA, or we call it First Nation, or we call it any other name, but let's build the nation. But why we chose FINSA was because FINSA had a basis already. It had its documents in place and so on and so forth. FINSA also had office bearers. And the office bearers were people who drove FINSA from wherever it came from, because it has a long history. And it drove it up until this point, where everybody else adopted it. And in the meeting, we decided we're going to adopt it. And what we will do is begin to prepare as a government in waiting, so to speak. Now, of course, it gave us logistical problems, because what they say is, be careful of what you ask for, because you might get it. And now we've got it, and we're grappling with what to do with it. Right? That's FINSA in a nutshell. I can't. There's too much to talk about around the event itself, because the atmosphere was good, the minds were good. There were no arguments. Believe me, there were no arguments. Elder Andy can tell you. Thing can tell you as well. Patrick. Now, for us, what happened was, it was a very organized summit. People did presentations. Comrade Neville Felix did a brilliant presentation that actually will guide us on the broader understanding of the nation and what we need to do, how we need to do it. Are we racist? Are we non-racist? What are the principles? Are we democratic? Aren't we democratic? What are the land issues? How do we deal land? What are the rights of the people? What are the rights of the leaders, for example? And a lot of things came out of the summit, which I will talk about. The next question becomes, what format does the nation take? Because we are diverse people. As you see in this room here, we were having a discussion only on religion. And we had diverse views. Now, when we become a nation, we're going to get even more diverse. Diverse in our social understandings, diverse in our attitudes, diverse in our approaches, diverse in our cultures, diverse in all these things. And now we were asking, how do we do this? Now, we have been having discussions on the FINSA group for a long time, for about 4 years, 3-4 years, about what format should the nation take. Because it needs to accommodate everyone.
That's right.
How does it accommodate the Nama? How does it accommodate the Greek one? How does it accommodate the Bushman? How does it accommodate the Kam? How does it accommodate the various houses of the Kam, for example, and still find justice for all of them, and democracy for all of them, and accountability for all of them, and decision making for all of them, and at the same time allow spaces for women? Now, what we did, we put together what was called the Democratic Federation of Khoisan People. We started there. But then, after the summit, I was thinking about it and I said, no, this is an indigenous struggle. It's not Khoisan, because the name Khoisan is in itself a flawed name. So now we've changed it to the Democratic Federation of Indigenous People, SA. Now I'll tell you why SA. Because it will embrace all the indigenous people who are Aboriginal and indigenous to Southern Africa, which means even the colored people. Because in all our discussions, one thing that keeps on coming up is that we see ourselves as different from the colors. Some of us say we're better than the colors. Some of us push away the colors. But yesterday we were all colors, and we have different positions on that. So how do we accommodate these positions? So the ideal vehicle that could do this was a federation, where people come together, they sign an accord. If you, whether you're Korana or Nama or whatever else, or San or whatever it is, you sign the accord, and then collectively we'll make the vehicle what we want it to be, based on the sound principles of democracy, inclusion, justice, equality. We use all those principles to form the nation. And from that point, the decision making begins to be done. Now, after the summit, we came back, we said, now we got to proceed on making the nation a reality. So now we're looking and talking around that, on how do we do it.
That's right.
I've developed a bit of a plan, a one-year plan, that breaks the year up into quarters. It says quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. We had to analyze FINSA and say, what are the resistance factors to FINSA? You know, why wouldn't someone join FINSA? There's been an understanding in the marketplace, like when we talk to people, they say, no, FINSA is Greg Fick. You know, and that's coming up quite a bit. But we're also beginning to realize that people also don't understand what is a nation. Right? So we stuck with that sort of thing, where we take a nation and we put it around a person, whereas we don't understand that we're all part of the nation. And it's through a democratic process that we'll become the nation. The inclusive process, a process of dialogue, even if it's arguments, but we're dialoguing all the time into making the nation. Now we're sitting and saying, how do we go out to our communities? Who do we speak to? What is the message we take? We formulated a little document, for example, that indicates what is FINSA, what is the Federation. It's a quick document that you can read through. It's got points. What is FINSA? What does it do? What does it intend doing? So on and so forth. That we're going to use. Then, of course, FINSA has its own principles. And when you look at the Federation has principles that are in place, but it does not have office bearers in place. Because we want everyone at the table, and they will decide who the office bearers are.
That's right.
So that's where we are at this point. So we said, what do? We said, okay, let's stop here as the first port of call. Let's sit around and say, how do we begin to make this happen? Right? That's FINSA, that's the Federation. Now there's another conference that's coming up in
24th, 20 to the 27th of April. It's the convention. It's a conference of unity, which is linked to one of the kings, King Cornelius.
All of them.
But it's linked to him primarily, because that's where we are chatting, and it's going to be what they regard, according to Dr. Sam, as an international engagement with world leaders, politicians, and every kind of person who feels that he is entitled to be at that conference. And everybody will be treated equally. And according to all my experiences on all these various summits, conferences, which I've got a mandate from the Qurana House to go and represent and come back with feedback. We were always interested in attending, not to join anybody, but to go and gather information as to, participate and show the action of unity. And then we come back, and as a house, we decide whether we want to engage permanently or whatever with any so-called federation or national courts. Just name you two that's very important, or three. Foundation Nation Restoration, which we've been dealing with in our last Heritage Day in your church, Mbeli.
Yes.
Then we have the very first one, where we got a mandate. I got a mandate from the cultural leaders with Andre and Paul to come and start something out here in KZN. And we've developed, so that was Khoisan Kingdom. They're still in existence. Foundation Nation Restoration Network is still in existence. And then you have Sabaim, which are also represented the house there. And they gave feedback, but we find that we're still in the same space of being in a state of limbo. Don't know what's happening nationally. So therefore, our imperative is always to engage and communicate such that we are not outside the periphery, but we actually engage to show our engagement in a sense of unity. And that's critically why we attend these meetings. So hence, when I met Rasul there, I got a further understanding of what his role is, what the activist roles were, the organizations, and also the cultural leadership, which we determined will always be the supreme authority as per se. And in a governance structure, it will be politics, governance, economies, agriculture, and all these other macro institutes will be subjected to the cultural leadership and the determination, because this is a cultural dispensation. We can't avoid that. So for me, the big question was always to go there and engage and to gain awareness, because somebody has to come back and keep communication with the people back in this province, because this province is actually way behind. In fact, we're so way behind, it's almost like we are disjointed. So our efforts, and including Rasul, I don't necessarily always agree with Rasul's opinions and many other kings and chiefs, but we're in a process of learning, and until we can continue to develop through engagement, we're going to stay stuck. So this is very important. I consider this to be the fruits of a provincial foundation, because we attempted that before, Pastor Bailey.
Yeah.
Kind of said.
Yes.
We tried many times to get our leaders together, the cultural ones, right? And because of these power struggles, we always seem to be disjointed, and it remains so presently, according to me. I may be wrong, but I'm out there in the field, and I'm trying to be the best kind of ally that I could by facilitating and accommodating the schools, the Patrick Duns, the businessmen, the pastors, whoever, because it's my role and duty, and we want to be always transparent in what we do. And we appreciate initiatives like this. And if people got perceptions about why you're going to meetings, what's your agenda? They must ask. They mustn't perceive.
Okay.
And I'd say, for me, we have to keep on having dialogue and go on. And if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it.
You see, this is where we say the federation is necessary, where they are equals. Because, for example, Elder Andy now said everyone must fit under the cultural leader. That's power positioning already. And we're stumbling around that. You know, what makes a cultural leader better than me as a political leader? You know, what makes them both better than the religious leader? What makes them both more than the social activist that's doing something else? So we're now sitting and saying, until we get a space where we can all sit at the table, we don't make assumptions. We don't prescribe. We sit and let's listen and let's decide. Let's become one nation. Because as a nation, you're entitled to your position. Like South Africa, you could be a communist, atheist, whatever you are, but you're still a South African. Now that concept is escaping us, because what we want a political nation, or we want a cultural nation, or we want a religious nation. We say no, but we haven't even spoken yet. So what we do is create the space, and you come as you are. If you come as a cultural group, there's a space at the table. If you come as a religious institution, there's a space at the table. You can even come as a soccer club. There's a space at the table. Why? Because you could be the minister of sport, for example, and have a better perspective on sport than I would as a political activist. For me, I don't like sport. Give me parliament, you know. So what we're doing is actually just creating the space and including people in the nation. The one sticky point, the one very sticky point is the colored people. You know, because it goes to the very question of who are we. You know, if I don't realize I'm Khoisan today or acknowledge that I'm Khoisan, can I be thrown out? Who decides whether I should be thrown out of the nation? You know, who has that right? And what legitimacy have they got to throw me out? I'm for example, I subscribe to the concept of Khoisan. My mother's from Escort. That's where her parents were from. And that's Bushman territory. You know, now my cousins say they're colored. Do I throw them out? Do I say, no, remain landless until I decide you are Khoisan and you're right? So this is where we're saying the round table becomes essential, where we include everybody. You come and you sit and you talk, whether you agree you are Khoisan or not. But if you've been oppressed under the label colored, you deserve a seat at the table. And as an equal, I don't have to wear skins to be better than you. Not at all. But some of us, and we saw this kind of chauvinism, when I came to Ghanadendal the day before, I came a day early, and we sat under a tree, which was a beautiful experience. Believe me, we sat around the fire and we were having this engagement. And there were cultural activists, and I was a political activist. And we had an argument that raged for about half an hour. But in the end, we agreed. We said, yes, we agree. Now, this is what we need to do at the round table, where we can decide. If we say we're going to deal with the land question, we must deal with the land question. Should we give the land question, for example, to the chiefs? Should the chiefs only make decisions on who gets the land? Or should every citizen of the so-called colored Khoisan community have a right to land, have a right to housing, have a right to the economy? Because if we take some of the extreme views from what I call the far right in the Khoisan movement, then we're going to oppress our own people. We're going to do exactly what the apartheid regime did to us, we'll do to our own. And for me, that's what I'm currently grappling with. And I see the federation as the center point. I also see FINSA as the means of doing it. So yeah, that's where I am.
Could I interject there? To give you a chance, I think that it's imperative that I create this balance between what I've experienced and what Rasul is proposing. There's a difference. Uh, the first thing is when we get back to the conference. The conference actually is the vehicle. And because of all my other experiences, this conference will dwarf FINSA, believe me. And I think Rasul will agree, because it's not just FINSA from a province, it's provinces from Southern Africa and delegates from around the world. So the significance is vastly different. The impact will be vastly different. The impact will be vastly different. The logistics and the imperatives will be, the dynamics will be totally different. So I think Rasul will agree with me that this conference will facilitate all these other conferences that we spoke to, because if it doesn't, when do we do it that everybody comes under one umbrella to make these determinations as to what is bothering Rasul with regards to the cultural versus the organizational versus the activism? So we lack knowledge presently, and there's no superstructure. So this is a vehicle to create a superstructure, and I see it as a last stop, because there cannot or won't be until another 20 years' time, if we don't agree here in a provincial, in a national conference with kings, chiefs, queens, liars, rogues and thieves all allowed to come there and voice their opinion as equals. I can't see what other vehicle will do this. And over there, the questions of Rasul will be answered. FINSA, my questions, your questions. And I think that the framework, the structures and the protocols could be determined there. I'm not saying they will finalize. It's not a place to finalize anything. It's a place to put everything on the table, as Dr. Sam says, and then we don't know the process thereafter. Probably representatives from each of these factions will have to later on get together and make a final determination. But with regards to Rasul's issues about the cultural side, must remember we are governed by law. The constitution of the land, corporate government, customary law, sorry, and our customary laws of Khoi and San, not of every other traditional leadership, and the Bill of Rights will give credence to what we have to do, how we do it, because you can't work outside the law. The only way you can do things different and still survive legal responsibility is to change the laws. But that is going to be, democracy. It'll take you many years to even get an amendment to democracy as it is in the present state. So we got to find a vehicle for ourselves. We must forget about all the others at the moment. It's a bit selfish, but I'm saying if we don't start with ourselves, we're going nowhere, because we actually bombarding ourselves with external factors we can't have control of, like other people, you understand? So the first thing, the foundation, the platform is being set. And I believe that every cultural house, every organization, every political dispensation or whoever should send a representative, because if they fail to do that and they fail to hear or get the message, then it's terrible. Then they're left out of it. So we have to make a concerted effort, as Rasul and I are tasked by the conference, to bring about awareness about this conference.
With the conference, I don't want to get caught in a war of conferences. Number one. What happens, I don't know about this conference. I was just co-opted and put onto a group. Now, when you tell me it's King Cornelius's conference, then already there's a big problem that's going to happen. But we're going to support it. For me, my stop was
Yeah, that's
I
according
stopped.
to-
My stop
Right.
was Geladen.
Mm-hmm.
Why, and I'll briefly explain why I think it makes sense, is because people put a document on the floor, not something theoretical. They put a document that said, these are our principles, this is how we're going to function, this is how we're going to make it work.
Do you have a copy of this document?
I'll give you the documents. This conference, I think we should all attend it. However, I'm getting reservations about it, but I'm going to raise them at the due time. One is there's no framing document, because when you have a conference that's very big, the first thing that happens, you frame it.
Yeah.
You say, these are the key aims and objectives. This is what we want to achieve. This is who's going to be represented. This is how they will be represented. And this is a celebratory conference, or it's an elective conference, or it's a talk, you know, it's a consultative conference. And we've had before we've done this, because for me, I've attended conferences in Cape Town, Joburg, twice and thrice, and
Kimberley.
when you go, there are no clear indications of what we want. With the end results, everybody goes with a different impression to the conference, and when they don't get what they want, we fight. Now, for me, I like a document in my hands. I like to look at it, I can talk around it, I can argue around it, if I'm going to argue. This conference is a necessity. I'm not tasked yet by the conference. I'm listening. At this point, I'm listening. I will encourage as many people as I can to go there, whether I agree with it or not. Because I believe that the dialogue shouldn't only happen at my table, because we are a nation that's dialoguing.